What is truth? It seems pretty simple, but throughout history, it's been talked about a lot and questioned through religion and other means. And in today's time, it's becoming more confusing with things like AI.
It seems basic, like something is either true or false, but historically truth has been way more than that. It's always been a social institution and kind of a collective mindset that has changed a lot over time. To understand where we are now and how we got here, there's been a lot of major changes in how people have understood the word.
Originally, truth had nothing to do with anything mathematically or factually based, which is why I used a image of a man pushing a boulder up a hill, because it kind of goes against logic.
Linguistically, the word comes from an old Germanic root that's shared with words meaning trust, loyalty, protection, and security. And across early European languages, related words meant things like faithfulness and sworn loyalty. So early on, truth was being more about reliable, strong, or dependable, kind of like a tree or a man relentlessly pushing the rock up the hill. And that's where we get to the second change of the word truth. But before I get to the major change, I'd like to point out one thing and the reason why I have the cross on this visual.
As truthfulness was heavily tied to religion, as someone who was religious would be loyal and dedicated to said religion and would be very faithful. They'd be faithfully true.
Which are all major themes within religions, major ones like Christianity, where you're expected to be loyal and very faithful to the god or deity that you are worshiping. And again, in that sense, truth does not mean factually true. It's more about who do you believe, who has been there for you, who has been reliable to you. And that's what leads into the second major change in the 17th century, where truth is seen as honor and credibility. In the 1600s, modern science had started taking off in a sense, and truth began to change. Instead, mainly coming from ancient authority, truth became more tied to who was considered credible and kind of separated itself from the church. Stephen Shapin explains that during this period, the most trusted truth teller, that is a tongue twister, was the English gentleman, because gentlemen were considered wealthy and pretty socially accepted and independent. They were seen as free actors. They weren't controlled by anyone or had to lie for personal gain. In other words, people trusted them just because they had nothing to get from lying. And something interesting I'd actually learned about is that's why calling a gentleman back then a liar was such a big deal, because accusing someone of lying, or what they called giving the lie, attacked their honor and kind of their reputation as a person as a whole. It wasn't just like calling someone out saying, hey, like you're bluffing, dude. It's basically saying they didn't deserve trust at all anymore, which is why sometimes it actually led to duels. Truth during this period was based extremely on moral certainty. You didn't necessarily even need proof for what you were saying. You just really needed a good reputation, and people would pretty much believe whatever you're saying. And now we get more into the modern era, where truth becomes more tied closely to data science and verification. It's the idea that facts, evidence, and measurements kind of decide what's true, or a mathematical truth, which is why I have all the math and the crane lifting the boulder instead of some man trying to push it up, because it makes more sense for efficiency to lift the boulder. But more recently, that system has started to break down a lot. And a lot of scholars now talk about living in a post-truth era. And this just pretty much means that all those facts and numbers don't necessarily even persuade people anymore. And it's interesting because it's kind of creating a closed circle where we're returning to where truth kind of meant more of what you believed. Philosophers like Ludwig argue that truth depends highly on social context and shared games, meaning kind of what counts as true depends on how many people use that kind of language. Second, psychology. Humans have confirmation bias. We naturally accept information that fits our belief and reject stuff that makes us uncomfortable. Meaning, if you don't naturally believe it, even if you don't know, this can be subconsciously. If you disagree with it, you're going to deny it as a truth, even if mathematically it is a truth. And then third, technology has made social media, and through social media, echo chambers have kind of arisen. And an echo chamber is just where you're surrounded by people that agree with you or say the same things as you do, and so you think, okay, it must be true then. Everyone thinks this, even though it's a small amount of people that actually think it. You're closing yourself in kind of a bubble, and so people just end up surrounding themselves with information that reinforces what they already think. So the word truth from ancient times kind of shifted from firmness and loyalty to the 17th century, where it became more of a thing of honor and credibility, to today's data-driven, but also kind of reverting back into a weird form of what truth used to originally mean, where it's more just not even about the information that's available anymore. It's just more about who's saying it and why we believe, or what we already previously believed, that we will take as a truth.